But anyway, let's move on to issues back home. We'll keep you up to date on all developments on that. We are going to be talking up next to Dan Jarvis, Labour MP, former British Army officer, get his thoughts on that as well. First up, though, let's talk about Scotland's new First Minister, Humza Yousaf, meeting with the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak yesterday, during which Humza Yousaf raised concerns that the UK government is attacking devolution during his first in-person meeting. Let's talk to Scottish political editor of the Daily Mail, Michael Blackley. Good morning to you, Michael.
Hi, good morning,
Good
Julia.
morning. I mean, it's been a very, as you and I've discussed many times, very difficult first few weeks for Yousaf having to deny that he's head of a criminal organisation, given his ongoing police investigations and 2 arrests of 2 of the most senior figures in the Scottish National Party over some missing £600,000 of campaign funds. No charges brought as yet, or we don't know if ever. So obviously a live police investigation. We don't want to touch on that, but there's no doubt at all Humza Yousaf wants to sort of divert attention. One is by criticising the British government, because that's the sort of meat and potatoes of the SNP, but also specifically focusing on this Gender Reform Act to basically give gender self-ID and the British government's attempts to stop that from coming into place in Scotland. Is this a vote winner for him, though?
Well, it's actually a very difficult issue because not only does the Scottish public on the whole oppose the SNP's gender reforms, but there's a lot of people within the SNP that oppose them as well. So by picking a fight on this issue, by dragging it through the courts, there are some in the SNP that think it's a bit of a lose-lose situation, because either he wins the case and has to take through legislation that's pretty deeply unpopular in Scotland, or he wins it, and either way, it's a pretty bad situation for him. So it was interesting that, not a surprise at all, that he raised this issue in his first talks with the Prime Minister, and he was also raising the issue of independence, which was all pretty predictable. You could have probably written the script beforehand of what the 2 sides would discuss. Not really. There's been a lot of explosive events in Scottish politics, but this meeting probably wasn't one of them.
Yeah, indeed, that's certainly the case. But it is interesting. I mean, in terms of Rishi Sunak, I mean, he's made a number of statements. He's written an article of the Express today talking about protecting women's rights and women's safety and girls' rights and safe spaces. We've got Keir Starmer talking about educating boys on toxic masculinity and how to respect women and girls. And then we've got the Labour Party in Scotland backing the SNP on this measure, which would basically allow, as we have seen, a man who has raped 2 women being put in a cell in a women's prison with them because, he's legally a woman as much as I'm a woman. This battle over women, I mean, it's not about trans rights, it's about women's safety and women's rights. This has got very toxic for quite a lot of political parties, and I have a funny feeling it's going to play a much bigger role in the next general election than a lot of people think. I think perhaps that a lot of male political commentators think, because every woman I know is up in arms about this.
Yes, we've seen it actually for several years now, that it's been really dividing various political parties, especially Labour and the SNP. It seems like the Conservatives are the only major party that are pretty united in what their approach is on this, and their concern first and foremost is female rights and women's only spaces and protecting those. But in Scotland, of course, because the legislation was brought forward at a relatively early stage, we've now seen years of discussion of this, and it's proved to be a really difficult issue. It was a difficult issue for Nicola Sturgeon, who obviously talked about the importance of pressing ahead with this legislation, but it did really divide the SNP, and there was the biggest rebellion since the SNP came to power over this issue when it went through the Scottish Parliament. So yeah, a pretty toxic debate for all political parties.
It's fascinating, again, these diversionary tactics, but I'm just not sure you want to divert to this issue. Michael Blackley, I know you're going to be having a very interesting few weeks, months, possibly even years there, watching what's going on there. Scottish political editor of Daily Mail, Michael Blackley. Sorry, I almost made him Michael Flatley then. I would never do that to it. Benedict Spence, I mean, it is absolutely fascinating, that that. And it is a toxic debate.
It is. I mean, it's interesting of a sort. I was just thinking Rishi Sunak meeting Hamza Yusuf would have been quite a boring meeting, so at least we've got something juicy for them to be talking about if they were going to bring it up. But I think you're right. It's not really in the commentariat class. I don't think people quite realise how much being able to say whether or not a man is a woman or not actually cuts through as to your level of competence or your preparedness to lie barefaced to people's faces.
You're either insane, you're lying.
Yeah.
Either way,
that
you're
matters.
unfit for public office. I don't care what party you are. There are plenty of Tories who've said things like that. Caroline Noakes, the chair of the Women's and Equality Committee, will never come on this show. And she told me, because you're a transphobe. I said, I'm not a transphobe. I don't have any negative feelings towards trans people at all. Never expressed them in public, in private, verbally or online. Why do you think that? She goes, because I don't think that trans people should be, you can't say a trans woman is a woman. And she won't come on the show because of that. I mean, sorry, it makes you insane. I'm sorry, that's what it does. It makes you insane.